Alright, welcome back guys to another operator video for Rainbow Six Extraction. Today we're going to be going over only a couple more operators that we really have in the actual list. I believe we already done Gridlock. We'll go over Rook in a little bit. I mean, he has a pretty straightforward gadget. We have Lion to be going over. We've done Fuse already. I think we still have IQ. We've already gone over Habana and everything else, so Pulse has also been covered a while ago, I think. I could be wrong on that. And we also have Doc and Zofia. I don't have Zofia on level 10 yet, so I'll get around to her later on. So one of the operators I want to kind of go over, and this one is actually pretty solid. Everyone's guy that you'd be playing in ranked or in the Maelstrom mode if you have them in the actual lineup. And this is good old Doc. So again, like with all these kind of operator videos, I'll be going over every single aspect of them and what he excels at. First, we'll be going over his actual primary and secondary, or his actual arsenal, going through advancements, going through like level 1 through 10, all his upgrades, his actual main gadget, which is pretty straightforward for, his name being Doc. I mean, we can all kind of assume what he does, and his secondary or his passive ability, what that does. So let's go ahead and jump into it with his primary weapons. So starting off, he does have 4 primary weapons, so he does have a pretty extensive loadout for primaries. He does have one of the best shotguns in the game right off the rip. Unfortunately, this gun does not come with a suppressor, so shotguns are really great in this game. You'll be giving up a bunch of range and lower capacity for, or technically like 2 fed or magazine fed, depends on what gun you're using, for more destruction and utility based abilities here. So you're able to shoot out sprawl, clear like a bigger area due to its larger spread, and you can also blast holes in the wall for more destructive ability to set up sight or to quickly get away from enemies. Anything like that if you're trying to quickly run away from them, which will save your neck so many dang times it's unbelievable. And you also have a large amount of stopping power up close. It does the most amount of damage, I think, out of every other shotgun. The closest damage shotgun in the game is the Russian shotguns, and this is the SAS G12, which does 50. So technically it does beat it out with 53 damage instead of 50. So it is slightly harder hitting, but it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. It is pump action, so it does have a little bit more range and supposedly a lot shorter or a lot longer fire time than most semi-automatic shotguns like the SAS G12. So the SAS G12 shoots faster for it being semi-automatic, but it has the shortest, or one of the shortest ranges or effective damage range. So this one is in a bit of a weird middle ground. So it is single fire, or fire rate is a single shot before needing to rack in another shell or pump it. But it does have a faster fire rate than most other shotguns, which is kind of weird. So do expect that. It's not extremely fast, but it is a lot more forgiving than most. It's kind of like in a weird middle ground of sledges or not pulses, or sledges shotgun or smoke shotgun, the M58 OA1 pump action, the one of the best longer range kind of shotguns, but it has the slowest rate of fire to it. And it's like the weird pulse one that's kind of in between, so like the 410-14. This thing is single fire, but you can spam it like no tomorrow. It is technically semi-automatic, as you can see, but it does have more of a close range, but second the better. So this one has a bit longer range than Pulse's shotgun. It shoots a little bit slower, but it still packs the most amount of damage. So it's a good all-around between everything. It's an absolutely like a really solid option. You just can't run a suppressor on it, so there is that. So it's kind of weird when it comes to limited for attachments. Same with the actual optics and stuff. You only have the reflex red dot and holographic all being the standard version, and the vertical grip for recoil control. But again, you don't need to worry about that because it is pump action. Recoil control you don't need to worry about. Just because that animation takes so long, by then you should already compensate for that one shot and be able to recenter back into your original area of aim. So there's that. Capacity again is only going up to 7 or 8 shells if you count the one that's already in the gun. So that is something to keep in mind. His second gun is actually a really solid SMG. It is the MP5, but does a pretty low base damage at 27 damage. With a suppressor, it does 16, so it doesn't really hit like a truck when it comes to suppressive fire, so I don't really recommend running any kind of suppressive attachment on this gun because it just doesn't hit hard enough, and the I would say like the Scorpion would technically get away with it because the Scorpion does 13 damage. I mean, like, it's really sad, but it has a real fast rate of fire to kind of make up for it, and it's 40 round capacity. This one is not really all there. It does 16 damage, which is, just 3 points more, and it has a 800 round rate of fire, so it is still very fast, but it's not really that forgiving, and it does have a 30 round capacity. So running suppressor, not really a recommended choice in my opinion. But it only has an option of the muzzle brake, and this only helps out with the first 2 to 3 rounds of the gun, which is pretty okay. I would actually run this anyway. It's your only other option for recoil control, so I wouldn't really see why you wouldn't run it, unless you just want to have a hard challenge. But it does make sense for an SMG because it does have a faster rate of fire. It's not insane, and so the recoil is really easy to control. As you can see there, it just has a little bit more horizontal deal. But the first like 3 rounds, which you'll be leading into more of your gun, it would actually help out a lot more. So either way, it's your only option, so you get what you can, and it just gives you a benefit overall. So I would run that on your gun instead. Scopes is kind of weird for this, so it does have the standard reflex, the standard red dot sight, the weird futuristic looking holographic sight that looks like a bed of a truck if you look at it in a weird way. So there's that. It has the 1.5 times zoom, which if you guys already seen all my other videos, you know why I run that. And you also have a pretty solid longer zoom scope, which is at a 2 times zoom. So this is also a pretty mid-range scope for an SMG. So I don't really recommend running this. It does help you out for longer range shots, but this is an SMG. The effective damage range isn't really the best. So it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for you to be running this scope on there. But I mean, whatever you want to run for your gun, that's up to you. So is that. And the vertical grip is its only selection is the vertical grip itself. It just helps out recoil overall, so it's not bad. I hate the skin. It is one of the worst looking ones in my opinion, so I'll switch it over to that. But yeah, so overall it's a solid gun. It's a fast fire rate and it feels good. I mean, it does a solid 27 damage. It's not bad at all. It's just really bad when you run a suppressor on there. It just doesn't keep up despite having a solid rate of fire. It's just not good enough to uh, feel good when you put on that suppressor. So overall, great option. It's just play like an SMG. It's no assault rifle or anything. It does have a drop off way faster, or damage range drop off faster than most assault rifles. Leading into the next one, which is an even odder kind of gun, and this is the P90. So this one actually has, I always love the P90 in any kind of first-person shooter game. It's definitely one of the more interesting and I'm going to say cooler looking guns, but this one is really oddly awesome. So let's go over that. It's really limited on its actual attachments. So for scopes, it has a reflex sight, the red dot sight, the futuristic holographic sight, and the 1.5 times zoom. I run the 1.5 times. And for the actual muzzle brake, you have the suppressor. We want to run that on there, and this will do 13 damage. Again, that's actually on par with the Scorpion Evo, which runs at like 1,000 and something rounds per minute. This does 970, so it's still not really as fast of a fire rate, but technically you can make it to where it feels kind of good when you're shooting at enemies. And it does actually have a slightly larger magazine size than the Scorpion while running a suppressor on there, and that is 50 rounds by default. So it was really cool. So the Scorpion has a lot more recoil due to its faster rate of fire, and only has 40 rounds in its capacity. So technically it does stand in its own weird category of real fast firing. It doesn't hit really hard without a suppressor. It only does 22 damage, which isn't good at all. But it does kind of keep up with the 970 rounds per minute. So it is a weird middle ground. So if you want to run the suppressor, you can. It's going to kind of throw off a little bit of its performance, but technically you can get away with it. unlike the MP5. The muzzle brake, this will help you out with the first 3 shots of your gun. Uh, it's the only recoil control attachment you have, so I normally just run this on there. Makes it to where it's already a laser beam without it, or the none attachment. Again, this gun has no actual vertical grip on there. It already comes with one, I guess, but there's no option for that. As you can see, for the recoil pattern, it almost goes in a straight up angle or a straight up vertical. So not until you reach the orange or red spot where it actually starts spreading out, then actually it still spreads out in a fairly tight area where it actually starts bouncing around. So recoil isn't really a problem at all to this gun, despite it having such a fast rate of fire. So that's why I kind of like this gun in a weird way. It feels really good to use, and despite it not really hitting much like a truck, so it's really solid. Again, it has a 50 round capacity to it, so you don't need to reload very often at all. Or if you wanted to, since the recoil is already so low, you can put on the extended barrel. You don't really need to run the muzzle brake on there. And you can put this on and it makes it to where it has a range of more or less an actual assault rifle. And now you have a fast firing assault rifle shooting at 970 rounds doing 22 damage. So uh, cool, I guess. So it is really awesome if you want to run it like that. So that's what I mean. Uh, all the attachments helps out in a really weird way, but you can technically get away with running a suppressor and stuff on there. It's just going to feel a bit different and doesn't pack a whole lot of punch. Uh, but overall, it's an awesome gun. I actually love the P90 in this game, probably over in Rainbow Six Siege. It just doesn't hit hard enough in Rainbow Six Siege there, but in this game it's fairly well, just for how the enemies and stuff work. And it's also a really weird design for the gun, and I actually kind of like it. Like it's odd. It's something I don't really see very often. And I mean, like all the, the actual skins and stuff on the gun look really good too. So I recommend running that. So overall, really good secondary. I actually prefer this over the MP5 any day. So it does have a way faster fire rate, way more ammo zoom capacity at 50. So just those two options alone or 2 aspects alone is actually way better. And it also has almost straight up vertical recoil. So you really can't go wrong aside from the damage. And then you go down to the final one, which is actually one of the best guns out of the entire game. Lion and others will have this on them. It's the HK417. It's a DMR option for them. It runs at, or has a damage without a suppressor at 69 damage. Nice. And with the suppressor, it actually has a 41 damage output. So it does drop a pretty good amount, but it still hits like a dang truck. So you can run a suppressor on there. It's really flexible. You can do that. You'll still get kills pretty dang fast. Despite this gun being semi-automatic, it does have a really solid rate of fire. I think it's just slightly slower than the Mark 14 DMR that Vigil has. So it's really about on par with that. It has a lot more damage than that DMR, but it has a slightly slower fire rate. So a lot of people say statistically this is one of the better longer range and kind of somewhat good for close range quarters guns. So overall, really good option. I just run the muzzle brake on here. It just kind of makes it to where you can have all your shots for recoil, or every one of your shots from this gun come out almost laser accurate. As you can see for the actual recoil chart, it goes below the white line at the bottom of the chart, so you can see that it has almost near to no recoil at all. And running the default look of the gun already looks really clean and nice. The actual scope, since it is a DMR, it has a wide selection of scopes. So it has the reflex sight, the normal one, 1 times, the normal holographic 1 times zoom, the ACOG or 2.5 times zoom, red dot sight, which is the 1 times or the 1.5 times zoom scope on here, which I normally run, 2 times scope, and 3 times. So it's almost completely across the board, having every single magnification for a scope. So it's really flexible when you want lines of sight. But for grips, you only have the vertical grip for helping out with recoil control. So go ahead and run that. Overall, it's great for a longer range option, so I normally would run a 1.5 times or 2 times zoom. It doesn't go extremely long ranges with that for visibility, but it makes it to where you can still see a pretty good ways out, while still making it to where it's still real viable for close range engagements, because a lot of these maps and a large amount of the lines of sight will be fairly close quarters, because they want it to where, like, nests and stuff, if you activate them, uh, they'll be around a bunch of enemies that, easily howl and start pumping in a bunch of enemies at once. So they kind of make it to where it's closer together for that kind of map, just for the game to work out in that way. So you would be running into a lot of, or very few lines of sight to where you can use the most amount or use the best, like, actual benefits of this gun for longer ranges. So it is what it is. So it's actually one of the better guns in the game. It does have a 20 round capacity, or 21 if you count the one in the chamber. So overall, great gun to use. So his kit is pretty solid. I just don't run the MP5. It's not a bad gun, like I said. Just don't run a suppressor on it, and it's fine. P90, really weird, but I love it. It's actually one of the best. You start out with a shotgun, you don't get a suppressor with it, and that's essentially his whole primary set. You can't really go wrong with it. I think he's the only guy in the game. Actually, I think Rook has it too, but he's the only. Those are the only two that actually have the P90 primary. So let's go ahead and go to his secondary. This is actually, I think, the same as Rook and Lion, and he'll have the P9 by the start, and it's actually really solid. It's actually one of the better handguns. It does 45 damage by default, with a suppressor does 27, which is still pretty decent. Normally I run a suppressor on all my secondaries, so I'll be using that if I'm going stealthy. You want to aim for weak points, and you usually get yourself a one-shot kill 9 times out of 10, unless you're shooting at a Tormentor, Smasher, or Apex or anything like that. So obviously that's when you switch to your primary, or you just avoid them altogether if you're able to. So that is something to keep in mind. So, I mean, you'll always run that. It's a pretty solid option, and it does have a 16 round capacity, or 17 if you count the one in the chamber. So all around, solid handgun. You can't really go wrong with it. It doesn't really stand out in any kind of incredible way though. So there is that. So you can run the muzzle brake on there. It just helps out with recoil, makes it to where it goes well below the actual chart line. It is a handgun. It doesn't really kick a whole lot anyway, just for the actual gun it is, or the actual category that's in. Well, going down to the second option is the LFP 586, or the revolver. It's a really long name. I don't know why they don't call it just the revolver. Uh, but I don't really like this gun a whole lot. It does a massive amount of damage at 60, or not 68, 78 damage. So it hits like a dang truck, and it does have 6 rounds in the actual cylinder. I don't think it actually goes up to 7, so you only have 6, because that's just how the gun works. So that is something to keep in mind. So you are real limited on your actual, I want to say magazine, but cylinder capacity to it. But it does hit like a truck. So it's a pocket sniper rifle. So that's how you're going to be looking at it. It does shoot fairly fast. So you can't really go wrong with it. But here's the thing that I don't really find good about it, even though you does hit like an absolute truck and you can get good uses out of it. One, you don't have a suppressor option, so you don't get that. You don't get a sight option. You obviously can't get a grip option on it because it is a handgun. But you don't have any kind of options for attachments. You just have a paint on there that you can put on her skin, which is a bit of a letdown because you can't really have an optic on there, to shoot at enemies from longer ranges and use its high damage to your advantage. So it doesn't really have a bunch of customization to make it to where it's really good for how you want to set it up. So if you want to meme one enemies, you can. I mean, it'll drop enemies real quick for up close, so I guess you can find a use out of it, but it's not really something I would normally go with, so I'll just stick with the normal, suppressed handgun and run my primary without a suppressor on there, so I have a lot more flexibility when it comes to that. So P9, usually I run that over the revolver any day of the week, so put that on there. And then finally, let's get with his actual stats and his ability, all that kind of good stuff, and all his advancements. So for his stats, so his speed is really low, unfortunately. This is one of the very few operators that run this slow, but he is a 2-speed, so he is extremely slow. And his armor is 4, so he is a lot heavier armor, but I would kind of want it to where, he would have a max 5, so he is a bit slower, and a lot slower in speed, but he doesn't have the highest amount of damage resistance, so he's kind of in a really odd spot. He's more of a support character all around just because of actual health shots. So I guess they had to balance them out somehow. But running a rush pistol would definitely help this dude out any way you can. So I guess that's why they kind of gave or put that gadget into the game. So you could definitely use it if you want to use it. He's not the fastest. Stay with your team most of the time. You want to be walking at their pace all the time. That's kind of why they did it, I guess, is make it to where you'd stay with your team, uh, use their speed and stuff to your strengths, and teamwork makes the dream work kind of deal. But yeah, so let's go over his gadget. Real straightforward. You have a stim shot or stim pistol like you get in normal Rainbow Six Siege. Now there is a bunch of stuff, as you can see, like he did there. It actually showed that. So his stim shot right off the bat, uh, it will make it to where it's actually does a couple things. Well, it makes it to where, like, at default, when you shoot one of your teammates with your stim shot, it'll give them 15 health per shot that you give them, or at least at level 1. And but this is actually really good because this gadget has several charges in it at a time. I think you can have like 4 to 5 by the end of this. But you'll hold on to all his charges, and every time you go down, you're able to inject yourself with one of these stim shots to revive yourself. So it's kind of like Finka, but you actually have a limit on how many times you can use it. And that is like the weird downplay to that. So he is kind of like a different version of Finka in a nod sense, and I'll go over why that is. So it's really solid to pick up your teammates, and again, not only that you can revive yourself with this, you will also be able to revive teammates as well. You're giving them health as well, so if you want to get longer range revives on someone a longer way away while you need to run to extraction, you can just aim in their direction and fire, hit them, pick them up from afar, or get them to revive automatically from afar, and they'll be able to run off or save themselves, kind of like Finka. But Finka does that at a greater extent. She has like an infinite charge of her ability over and over again, and she can just revive everyone at once without uh, needing to worry a whole lot about taking the time and aiming in that direction. So technically you can get the weird same gameplay off that Finka has, but it definitely plays in a different way. Uh, this makes it to where, or efficiency, I guess, or I don't even know what in the world is that word? Efficacy? I think it's supposed to say efficiency, but health boost increased to 20, so it just goes up to 15 health per shot to 20 health. So it's a real small change. It doesn't really do a whole lot. Arsenal update, get yourself the MP5 and the revolver handgun. Speed increased to 2. He has a 1 speed by default, remind you. So this is what I mean, like he's real slow. Stronger recovery. You revive within or with an additional 30 health boost. So this is a really good thing with him. So he's able to inject himself with the actual stim pistol. So not only he'll be giving himself the 20 health boost that you would normally get from his stim shot, but he's able to, or like by him reviving himself, he'll get all that boost while reviving himself. But he also has a 30% increase to health boost as well when he picks himself up or get revived. So all around, he goes right back up to standard health, which is really solid. So really good, strong recovery kind of deal. That's his passive ability. But after that, you go to Arsenal Update. You get the P90 submachine gun potency, and this is a health boost increased to 25, and the shot count is increased to 4. So you start off with 3, and then increases to 4 here. And armor 4, you reduce incoming damage by 30%. Arsenal update goes to the HK417 marksman rifle, and then 10 stabilize. So health boost increased to 30, so you have 30 that you can inject yourself with for the actual initial revive if you need to pick up yourself or a teammate, and you get 30 health when you get up, when you actually get the stronger recovery. So you have 60 health boost when you pick yourself up all those times. So running a revive kit with this guy will be absolutely amazing, to where he's essentially immortal to a certain extent. Like you can go a really long really long time without him going down. So that's actually a really cool thing that he has over Finka in a weird way too. So Finka, if you run a revive kit on him, I'll be going over that later on, actually, when I go over that. But overall, he's a really great support character. He's there to keep your teammates alive, revive people from a longer range, and make it to where he's an absolute monster when it comes to just damage, because he can always pick himself up from revive, and also keeping a bunch of health when he gets back up, having a 60 health boost every time he gets back up. And he does have, again, I think 5 or 6. I think it's 5, yeah. So 5 stem shots at a time. So it is limited. You can only use your gadget so many times. Uh, so he's absolutely a support character. Stay with your team. That low speed is a real pain in the butt. So normally I recommend running the shotgun with that, because you're not going to be outrunning enemies. They're going to very quickly close that gap on you. So shotgun is, probably his starter weapon for a reason. So I recommend running that, running the P9, pretty much running his standard loadout that you get from the beginning of the game, or when you first get them, or first start using them. For React Tech, you don't really use a whole lot, like anything for like actually main explosives. I guess you can run a field wall to be more supportive or anything like that. There's not really anything that really goes well with this gadget, except for the revive kit, which is in the gear section. So with the revive kit, there's 3 operators. Doc is one of them that's actually included to make it to where this revive kit is very cheesy if you can use it right. But when you get knocked down to DBNO, or down but not out, you can revive yourself 1 time. Always fall to down but not out while revive kit is equipped. So as long as you keep this revive kit on your person at all times, so if you don't actually use the revive kit in time that you're down, you will always go down. But every time you get downed, if you're holding on to it, you will actually bleed out faster and faster every time. But you don't need to worry about that a whole lot. This is why, because eventually, like I said, you will eventually die off. It will start speeding up to where you would go down, you're instantly dead. So you can get to those points if you want to. I haven't actually personally got there, but I'm sure you can. But you run this revive kit. You'll have 5 charges. If you want to be real stingy with your actual kits or your actual stem pistols, you'll run this revive kit on you. Run Doc. You have 5 stem shots. Every time you go down, boost yourself back up to 60 health. Put in another stem shot into your gun, and keep on the good fight until you go down again and boost yourself up again. So that's one thing he has over Finka. So like I said, if you guys watch over my Finka video, I already did a whole deal over her. She has a very similar deal. Her gadgets, healing people all around the map, doesn't matter what range you're at. She doesn't need to look in their general direction. She just picks up teammates by activating a certain button. And she does recharge over time, so it is passive. It's like 60 seconds per each one, though, for the wait time between them. But the thing is, you have to wait for that recharge time, and that's a whole 60 seconds. So you can run a revive kit on her, and she will also use her ability to pick herself up off the ground to revive herself as well. So it is very similar to Doc, but you have to wait for the actual recharge for that. So if you get attacked by a bunch of enemies and go down again, you won't have that ability to pick you back up, and you actually have to use your revive kit, or you're going to bleed out. So it's a bit unfortunate. But Doc here is able to put in another stem shot into his gun almost right off the bat, just like reloading it like a normal gun and just waiting to go down again. So he's able to do more consistent going down but getting back up. So he's a lot more forgiving, but it does have a limit to it. So they definitely work in different ways, and actually I love that. So overall, he's a really good operator. He just really slow, but you want to play him as a support op. That's the whole reason why he's Doc. He's supposed to keep everyone alive and going. And you're running him 9 times out of 10, you'll have a pretty easy match, despite running into a bunch of really hard fight enemies like Smashers, Apexes, Tormentors, all that kind of fun stuff. But overall, really great operator. He has some really cool cosmetics as well, like his actual signature suit doesn't look bad at all. It has like a good blue or bright blue kind of color to it. So personally, I like the actual operator. He's really fun to play. Just slow as can be. Run the shotgun if you can. You're not fast enough to really outrun any kind of enemies. If you want to run that, or any of the P90, or the P90 is really fun to use, so he definitely has a fun one like that. So go ahead and run him. I think he's one of the best ones. He's obviously the first operator in the selection, so Have fun with them. Tell me what you guys think about them down in the comments, and I'll see y'all in the next one.